real business owners. At the end of the day, you've got to know what you want, and you've got to know what you're willing to sacrifice for what you want, right? When somebody, for instance, came to us looking for $100,000, what was that, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. Something like that. Maybe it's coming upon 2 years. I think it's about a little over a year and a half. And it was these guys that these programmers,
tech company,
tech stuff, right? And you know, they've already been successful at selling one of their softwares to a large corporation. You know, I won't say who it is, but they obviously know what they're doing. Yeah. They're smart. They're smart guys, right? But what these programmers do and these tech people do is they go out and they get investors' money, and then they use their talent and their time to develop it. So it's really not costing them really hardly anything. But most of these software companies are all about the exit strategy, right? They have the 3 to 5 year play where we're going to build it, we're going to test it, we're going to implement it and take it to market, and then we're going to prove that it works, and then we're going to go dangle that carrot to some company that's worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and then have them gobble us up for 20 million, 50 million, or whatever that number is. Yeah. And in this case, it's the exact scenario that I'm talking about, where they were, I think, raising $800,000 or something like that, or $1 million, and they were $100,000 short of that. And I knew that they needed the money quickly. Yeah. Right. And there was a clause inside of that agreement that if they brought on a second round of investors, that our shares would get diluted. Right. And so we would own less of the company. Right. But on a second round of funding, how that works is the company ends up being actually more valuable, because the second round of funding, they sell those shares at a much greater price. So even if your shares dwindle a little bit, each share is now more valuable. Right. And what I mean by that is if you had 100 shares that are each worth $1 a piece, that's worth $100. Would you rather have 10 shares that are worth $100 per share? Because that's worth $1,000. So that's really usually how they pitch these investments. Is yes, if we do a second round of funding or a third round of funding, yes, your shares do get diluted, but your shares also increase in value because of what they paid for their shares. Right. So now it's still worth more, even though that you have less, right? So that's the normal pitch in terms of somebody trying to raise money in the tech industry, or software programming, whatever, right?
The rounds of funding, the A, B, and C.
First round, second round. First round's usually family and friends. Second round, then they take it to investors. Whatever. Yeah. Okay, that kind of goes. Obviously, I'm telling a story, kind of bringing you guys with us here a little bit on this negotiation that we did a couple years ago that worked in our favor. So I knew that they were in a time crunch. Yeah. Because they were trying to get a deal done by X date.
And they said they needed to have their money by that date.
They had to have the money by the date.
Yeah.
And so again, one part of negotiating is shutting up and listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they will ultimately tell you their pain points at one point or another throughout the conversation. Again, this is if you are getting pitched because you have the money and somebody's coming to you. Again, they'll vomit it out at one point or another if you're just letting them speak, okay? They'll say, well, this is the deadline, or this is it, and you can kind of tell and you can sense their urgency or desperation, right? And so this doesn't ever happen, but what I said is, well, if you want the $100,000, then I want in the agreement that our shares could never be diluted.
Right.
And he goes, well, that's not the way it works. And I said, that's the way it's going to work if you want our money. Right. It's our money, right? So if it's our money, don't we get to call the shots on what it would take for somebody to get our money, right? And so that wasn't something that they were really happy with. And they're like, oh, well, I'll talk to my partner about it and I'll get back with you. And I was, and I go to.
But they were down to like their last 3-4 days. They had $100,000 still to raise to be able to finalize this deal. Yep. I remember that.
Yeah, and so I knew they were in a pinch, and I knew I had them backed into a corner, and I knew that was the time that we could get what we wanted to get out of the deal. And so the guy calls me back the next day and says, I talked to him. He wasn't too happy about it. This somber type mood. Yeah. And I was like, oh, they might say no, which I was 100% okay with. Yeah. It's not like we were desperate to throw $100,000 at them and wait 5 years to exit this deal, right? Yeah. And so it's not. usually when we get presented something, it's not like because we're advertising that we have money that we want to give.
Sure.
It's usually friends, family, somebody catches wind that we have money and, hey, go talk to these guys or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he said, yeah, after talking to him, he wasn't too happy about it, but we'll do it. You know? And I'm like, that's all I wanted to hear. The deal's done. So let's send over the paperwork. We'll wire the $100,000. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
You know? So again, that individual spoke his pain point. He spoke that he was in a bad situation and he only had a few days left. I knew if he did not accept this deal, it would have been very difficult to raise $100,000 within that week, or whatever it is, right? Because obviously they've tapped out quite a bit if they're starting to reach out to us. They've already reached out to their close family and friends, and this is a deal that, we did, and, we hope it works out. We don't know if it will or won't. Every deal that you do in terms of something that you negotiate on the business side of things, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But if you're the individual on the money side, you have a lot more say than the individual on the ask side, right?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's an important thing to highlight too, man, is how, because, in business, transparency is so valuable in so many areas, but as we were saying, it's really not a whole lot in business.
Not
like
in
had
negotiation.
Had that guy played his cards a little bit differently, right, and made this investment look very beneficial to us, but he wasn't so transparent about his time crunch.
Yep.
He wasn't so transparent about how they needed this money and they needed it very quickly and they were backed into a corner, because he said a lot of those things to us.
Yeah.
And so he was very transparent in that, which I appreciate the honesty. But when we're talking about a business deal here, a money exchange,
negotiations, you never show your cards right up front.
Exactly.
You just don't do it.
Exactly.
And he made that detrimental mistake, and he did that. Mm-hmm. Now, if I was him and I was presenting that to us, I would have presented it like, look, guys, I definitely respect what you're trying to accomplish. You don't want your shares diluted. I would reiterate that the value of those shares will go up on a second round. So if anything, you should want us to get a second round of funding to increase the value of the overall company so that we can end up exiting this thing at the price point that we want. If we don't raise a certain amount of money on the next round, then again, our evaluation on year 5 when we're trying to exit isn't going to be where we want it to be.
Right.
So if anything, this actually helps you, Trevor and Kel, long term by the way that this is set up. And secondly, I do have 2 or 3 other phone calls that I have to make right after this of a couple other people that want to hear the presentation.
Yeah.
Literally, you're an individual that I've already done the presentation to. It's the least path of resistance.
I'd love for you guys to be in this deal.
Correct.
I know where we're taking this company. You know what I mean?
You guys are the least path of resistance because I've already presented it to you. You guys already have the facts and figures. You guys have already reviewed the agreement. If it's something that you don't want to do, totally understand. But we're going to take this thing fucking big time.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see you guys miss that boat.
Yeah.
Again, he needs to present it properly.
Yeah.
But he showed his cards too early.